So, wanted to finally give this a shot. Recording this one from the car. Really had the opportunity lately. Been spending a lot of time road tripping a little bit and a ton of time driving. So, we'll see how this one goes. Curious to see in the editing if the audio okay. And was kind of inspired by another podcast I listened to from a fellow who he records it, I think, a couple times a week on his drive to work. Calls it drive to work. And records it a couple times a week and then puts out one a week. So we'll see how this goes. Maybe it never sees the light of day, but excited to give it a shot as we kind of cruise along here. So I wanted to follow up on a question I received last week, maybe a week and a half ago, but it was really just about fatigue management when it comes to training, staying consistent and productive. And I feel like I've touched on this before a couple times, but this also made me think of another broader topic that I've seen pop up on the internet a little bit recently, and that is, being burnt out from CrossFit, and not so much how to handle it, more so people saying like, oh, CrossFit burns you out, or CrossFit burnt me out. Here's 10 steps, of training I do now and why I don't do CrossFit. And so maybe we'll get into that a little bit. I think, well, anyway, to each their own. But as far as fatigue management, for me, I think this is different depending on different athletes and different goals. Big picture for me, I was talking to some friends recently, and they were just discussing like just aging up a little bit, or just even like dealing with injuries that come with life, and how do they do that with their training. And I think there's a couple ways I would answer this question. One, I do think it's really goal specific, and two, I think it's like, what do you use training for? We had a long day in the car yesterday, got to the Airbnb, did not want to work out, but just sort of felt crappy, and was talking to Cassandra. Anyway, said, I'm just going to go work out. Went outside, took the dogs on a long walk, went outside and did accumulate 150 burpees, and then at 0 and every minute on the minute, you do 15 air squats. Finished that workout. Really humid and hot where I was. Felt totally wrecked from it. Went inside, called Cassandra right before I got in the shower. And, the first thing she said, she goes, your tone and voice just sound better, as soon as you work out. You just seem already in a better mood. And it's 100% true. I was in a better mood. I was more talkative. I was more excited about the evening. And the reason I bring this up is for me, and how I look at training right now for most things, especially CrossFit, is that it's a reality check. It's my get back on track. It's part of my get back on track kit. It's there to it's kind of like an emotional safety blanket from the day, but it really is there as a consistent part of my day and a necessary part of my day to help me feel better about the day and allow me to just work through the other stresses of the day, especially the mental stresses. And I've said this before, but Adrian Bosman said to me recently, if you work with your mind, you got to rest with your hands. And I think working out is one of the things that helps me do that. So getting that in is really important to me. Now, what's cool about that is, as long as I feel physically challenged in the workout, or post-workout, that's kind of one of the only requirements. And so what that means is it doesn't need to be a boatload of time. To be 100% honest, I don't do a ton of warming up. I work out really consistently, which I think helps double for warming up. So for example, the last couple of days have just been these really quick bodyweight workouts in the 10 to 15 minute range. Did it outside, not the most comfortable place, got really sweaty, felt productive, went about my day. For me, and I feel energized after that. So for me, what typically holds me back from working out is not the physical fatigue. For me, it's I guess mental fatigue. And one of the ways I manage that, as silly as this sounds, is one, I try to stay as consistent as possible. I've gotten much better at, if I haven't worked out and I feel the need to, but I'm kind of on the fence, of just going to do something. And so two ways I manage that is, one is, having a accountability buddy. Cassandra is like absolutely awesome at if she has a busy day or something like that, squeezing in time to work out. So if there are other people working out, they want to throw down, I try and jump in as much as possible. The other one is I've really let go of always having the perfect workout. So just making sure I get something in, like I said, that just feels challenging. And you can make air squats and burpees. What I'm saying there is you can make simple movements challenging. But I think that's really important, because for the longest time I was wrapped around this idea that it, had to be squat snatches and muscle ups, and then afterwards I needed to do skill practice and a strength. And part of that was for my goals at that time, competing, but also you get a little bit addicted to that style. It becomes very routine. And now I've worked really hard to let go of this concept of the perfect workout and just getting something done. And afterwards, if I get something done and I want to do more, I will. Typically that doesn't happen, but I do leave that open. So most of my workouts, sessions last anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes, rare occasion an hour. And that is surprising for a lot of people. Oddly enough, that's one of the reasons I really started doing CrossFit is early on at the level 1, when they said, well, you can get fitter doing working out for 20 minutes a day. And in my head, at the time, I did not love training, didn't really like being in the gym. So the things that appealed to me with CrossFit is you could do it outside, and you could get fitness in 20 minutes, which was amazing to me because I didn't want to spend 2 hours in the gym. As I've said before, it was kind of funny that I would go on to spend the next 10 years of my life competing and spending multiple hours, more than 2 hours a day in a gym. But anyway, those are kind of two big things I use to help with fatigue management and the consistency. I'm not working out so aggressively. Like I definitely do workouts where I get sore, where my body is really beat down. And I do a fair amount of stuff like outside, taking care of, outside yard work, that kind of stuff, hiking. I'm always doing stuff with the dogs, with Cassandra, hiking, running, walking. But very rarely do I feel physically fatigued. It's more of the mental fatigue. And honestly, the cure for me with the mental fatigue is more movement, which seems counterintuitive, but it's what I really appreciate. And my goal is just to use this to stay healthy and kind of stay mentally on track. So I spent a lot of time really testing out and thinking, what is the kind of working out I have to do in order to make that happen? So that's really helped. In the past, when I've been training more aggressively when it came to fatigue management, one of the things I would really pay attention to are just overuse injuries. So for example, if I had a certain body part that really felt beat up or maybe just was straight up injured, I kind of got away from, someone once told me and gave me this advice. This is not medical advice, and it's not perfect if you're dealing with something serious, but he basically said, if you have an injury or you got something going on, once it starts to feel good again, wait another 4 weeks. And then, start to dip your toe into using it again. And this is frustrating advice because everyone wants to get back to things really quickly. But anytime I followed this advice, it has allowed things to get much better. Because I think most of us, we get a bump or a bruise, or we feel like one part of the body's a little overused, and we're like, I'll give it a day, and then I'll go back to it on day 2. And you're just in this cycle of give a day, take a day of rest, back to work, take a day of rest, back to work, and you never actually get out of it and heal. So following something like that, I think, is really good. When I've had, overuse issues, and I have not had many, to be honest, it was super rare. But instead of how do I do, a pull-up with 2 arms, one arm's really beat up, maybe I'll do strict, maybe I'll change the grip, I would just ditch it and just let the arm rest. So just ignore pull-ups. Maybe it's time to work on your sled pulls, your running, your back squats, your sit-ups, that kind of stuff, box jumps. And give that thing time to rest. So I think one thing that really helps with consistency and fatigue management long term is truly train around something. Don't try to I'll kind of do I'll just do my arm or my shoulder hurts, so I'll just do 100 lighter snatches instead of 20 heavier ones. Just stay away from it for a while and then reassess and adjust. I think that's really important. Another thing that really helps with fatigue management, I kind of touched on this earlier, and staying consistent, was CrossFit obviously is rooted in this concept of variance and, avoiding biasing and working your weaknesses. I do think long-term application of the program requires you to kind of go through these little phases of focusing on one thing at the cost maybe of your overall fitness. So what I mean by this is, if I'm having a really hard time, feeling mentally or physically motivated to get into the gym, I'll just do workouts that I'm like, I love that workout. And I've talked about this before, but power cleans, toes to bar, I could always do a workout like that. Getting on an echo bike and burpees, I know that's not a lot of people's flavor, but it's like, that is just something I could always do. And what I will find, if I'm feeling a little less motivated to be in the gym, I will find that, like, okay, well, if the option is no workout or doing, power cleans, which we did a couple days ago, or some sort of clean, I like cleans, squat cleans, power cleans, dumbbell cleans, I'll do the cleans. And I won't be like, well, I did that the other day. I'm like, if it gets me in the gym to do it again and be consistent, then I'm in. And that's been a huge step for me in terms of fatigue management and consistency, and just staying in the gym, and excited to stay in the gym and keep working out regularly. So those are a couple things there. What are some other things with fatigue management? Oh, as far as having a long-term goal, I think one of the things that's really important, or as far as like staying focused on a goal and consistent, is doing like check-ins on where you are in your progress, I think can be really good. So, when I think about this, like maybe your goal is to get a muscle up. And I think one of the places people go wrong with this goal, like maybe getting their first muscle up, or maybe you have your first and you're trying to get like 10 in a row. I think one of the places people go really wrong is that like the only metric they use is if they get the one muscle up or they get the 10 in the row. What they don't do along the way is, as they're practicing ring rows and kip swings and false grips and dips and pull-ups, is they're not making these little benchmarks for these other stepping stones along the way. Like, if you go from 5 muscle-ups to 10 muscle-ups, sure as shit, your pull-ups should be better. So along the way, you want to set out little bus stops, little milestones to test that stuff out. Just so that way, especially if you set a really lofty goal of like, hey, you have 2 muscle-ups, I want to get 10 unbroken, like there's going to be some time between your 2 and your 10. So along the way, you want to say like, okay, well at some point, I want to test and see, do my max pull-ups get better? Do my max ring dips get better? Can I do maybe I get a strict muscle up along the way from getting from 2 to 10. Same thing, if you don't have a muscle up, you should be testing different variations of your muscle up progression along the way. And again, you should be retesting how many pull-ups do you have, kipping pull-ups, strict pull-ups. So I'm going to test all of the component parts that I'm using in training to get to this, big pie in the sky goal. I think that's a really important one as far as consistency and fatigue management, because it keeps you really excited for the new things that are happening, and it helps you differentiate between the forest for the trees, because then you can start seeing the small steps along the way and the goals you achieve. And then it's not just like, well, another day of strict pull-ups and I still don't have a muscle up, seems really far away. That, looking at it that way, does seem actually kind of depressing. But if you say to yourself, oh, I got 6 strict pull-ups, wow, that's getting me, and I only used to be able to do 4, that's getting me closer to my goal of a muscle up. So I think this is a huge one, is having these little bus stops along the way to even build in tests of the components that you're using to train to work your way up to some much larger goal. And this can be applicable in a lot of ways. The other thing is, as far as goals, especially the longer I've done CrossFit, for example, it's really easy when you start, you just see PRs all the time, and especially you see PRs with weights, is having specific workout goals. I really liked this one. So for example, let's say like, I want to do like the workout, Helen. So 3 rounds for time, 400 meter run, 12 pull-ups, 21 kettlebell swings. I could just beat my head against the wall and do different variations of Helen, or just keep trying it really hard, or just, retesting it once in a while and seeing when the magic PR day happens. Or you could break it down and be like, well, what do I need to do to get a PR at Helen? Well, I need to be able to do 3 sets of 12 unbroken pull-ups. So you should start testing sets of unbroken pull-ups in your workouts as skill work, as extra work. You sure as heck need to improve your 400-meter run. So you can then, cut out the component parts, the running, the kettlebell swings, the pull-ups, and start adding those into your training. Maybe that becomes accessory work. Maybe that becomes like a little nasty finisher, all to improve the component parts of Helen, and then go put it together and retest Helen. So I think that could be a really fun way to stay consistent and avoid fatigue management, just because I really think the big message here, and this isn't always an easy thing to teach yourself or your body, is that you just need to stay very, very, very focused, narrowly focused, and focus on like the exact next thing in front of you. And that's really beneficial for us in staying on track toward a bigger goal and obtaining bigger goals. I read on Instagram the other day, a friend of mine's always posting. She always posts like inspirational stuff to her stories. We joke about it, but it's good. It's honestly, it's all good advice. And this one was like about it's really hard to change your thought process. It can be easier in a lot of cases to change your actions and then see how that changes your thought process. And actually, I found a lot of truth to this. This is actually something I heard way back in community school or community college psychology. And I've thought about it for a really long time. Like if I'm unconvinced about doing something, I just go try it a little bit, and then I try and make an opinion on it or have reflection on it. And this is funny. It reminds me of advice one time that long-time CrossFit Games competitor, seminar staff coach, affiliate owner, back in the day, Chris Spieler gave to me. We were talking a lot about religion, and we're talking about his faith and his relationship with Christianity, and I was just sharing like my thoughts on it, in my beliefs on it, and he basically boiled it down to, hey, if this is something you're interested in, like rather than trying to like think through it or convince yourself of it or having these mental debates about changing your thoughts about it, he said, why don't you just, what worked for me was, try following Jesus and his message in the Bible, and then look back and reflect on it. And I thought this was really, really great advice. I know people get really worked up about religion. I just thought it was like a really good example. This is a really great example of exactly what I'm talking about. If you are like having a really hard time wrapping your head around something, and there's not a lot of consequence to giving it a shot, try it a couple times and then reflect on it. And I think that can be really powerful. That approach can be really powerful for helping you work toward a goal, or helping you maybe change a habit or change behavior. So, just try it a couple times in the easiest, most accessible, most consistent way possible, and then see how it goes. And again, this even goes to my other favorite analogy when it comes to working out, is like when people are having a really hard time getting motivated to work out, I'm like, okay, do you brush your teeth? Yes. How often do you brush your teeth? Twice a day. How many days a week? Every day of the week. How many days a year? Every day of the year. Okay. What do we have to do to make working out as simple and accessible to turn it into a toothbrushing habit? And, especially if you've been consistent in the past but fell out of it for whatever reason. And that's why I talk about, doesn't always have to be complicated, doesn't have to be 30 minutes, can include movements that maybe you did recently but you love and they're the exciting ones you want to do, to rebuild that habit and change your thought of, I'm demotivated, I'm fatigued from training mentally. That can be a really easy, not easy, that can be a nice way to get back into it. Okay, so physical fatigue management. This is, this one's harder because it's very individual. A long time ago, when I was like competing aggressively and heavily, one of the ways I would pay attention to fatigue management is like I just had a built-in rest day. I was traveling a lot at that time for seminar staff. So, either Fridays or Mondays were always really hectic travel days. So I would use those days as, if I don't work out on a Friday or a Monday, that's okay. And that really helped me kind of protect me from myself, because I wanted to train a ton back then. The other thing was, back then, whereas now for me, what holds me back from working out is the mental fatigue, not the physical fatigue. Back then, it was the exact opposite. And so what I would check in on is, because I wanted to mentally work out so much, but like I said, sometimes I need to kind of protect my body from myself, is if I felt both physically and mentally worn down, then I would stay out of the gym. And like I said, this is something that's kind of changed in the last handful of years, but it's a big one. The last thing about physical fatigue management is the variance of CrossFit. So mental fatigue aside, if you're physically really beat up, take a look at your training, and are you truly using variance effectively? And are you using intensity effectively? One of the things we did recently at our affiliate, not our affiliate, the affiliate I coach at, CrossFit Mafia, I don't own it, but Brittany Kincaid and Jonathan Kincaid do. But one of the things we've done recently there is we've slightly increased the difficulty of the programming. And some of the members have said like, oh, this is really challenging programming. I like it, but I'm really sore and beat up. And I have to scale this workout. And when I hear them say that, I'm like, good. A long time ago when I used to follow CrossFit.com really regularly, there are just some really challenging workouts on CrossFit.com. Not only that, the challenge is different day to day. There are a couple things that help that. One is you can scale. And I think even the most veteran CrossFitters will benefit immensely from scaling. And the way I look at this now, and I really love this analogy, is that you could be a really great skier, and you could ski down black diamonds and double blacks and hit the chutes and just rip it up. But every once in a while, maybe it's your first run of the day, or maybe after you've just had an epic day, you just go and you just chill and cruise down the greens and the blues. And I think this is an idea that like we could benefit by bringing it more into our training. Is like, I feel like we turn being RX athletes into an identity. And like, if I've done 500 RX workouts, I'm just thinking of the bridge builder joke. But anyway, if you've done 500 RX workouts, you're like, I can't do a scaled workout because then I'm a scaled athlete. And that's not the case. I like to think about it as like, are you generally a more advanced athlete? Are you generally a more intermediate athlete? Are you a black diamond, blue square, green circle? Like, hey, if 99% of the time you're ripping down the black diamonds, if you're doing the workout RX and hitting the stimulus, your body actually really might benefit from and need a break. So just go chill out on a blue square or a green circle and have a sweet little cruise. Your body will thank you for it. So those are two things I would look at: fatigue management in terms of physically. If you're feeling really beat up, check your variance, check your intensity levels, check it, when the last time you've taken rest days, and then check to see like, are you scaling? Where could you scale? Especially if you've had a workout where you're like, oh, well, normally I could hit the stimulus on this. It was supposed to take 10 minutes, but it took me 20 or it took me 15. That's a workout to look back on and be like, ooh, where should I have scaled? Even though most of the time you don't need to. So that's that. I think I could keep rolling on with this one, but I want to try and wrap this up before too long. This is kind of a cool thing to do because my mind, when you're driving, your mind gets a little bit bored sometimes, and when your mind gets bored is when it does its best wandering. It could go everywhere. So I feel like I could keep talking about this. I wanted to talk about the burnout discussion inside of CrossFit. Maybe I'll just record that one separately and do like a bonus episode. But hope that gives you some ideas for the consistency, the fatigue management piece. So appreciate it, as always. And we'll talk to you soon.